100.7 The Bay, you got Matt here, and I'm joined on the phone. She'll be performing at the Lyric here in Baltimore, the Taking Care of Biscuits tour on May 3rd, comedian Fortune Feimster. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing a lot better now that I'm talking to you. I've been looking forward to getting you on the phone. Just want to start off, something that I love talking about with comedians is just this current era of comedy, because it feels to me like there's never been this many talented comedians that are just absolutely crushing it all alongside each other. It feels like this kind of new golden age of comedy. Do you feel that way? And what do you think is the biggest contributing factor to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that comedy is in such a great spot right now. It's more popular than it's ever been. These stand-up comedians are killing it. These tours that everyone's on are just, people are coming out for them like crazy. I think there's several things. People need to laugh more than ever. There's so much going on in the world that people just want levity. There's podcasts that everyone's doing that have become such a part of people's routines. That's created a whole new fan base. And then, people aren't really going to the movies anymore, but people still want those communal experiences. They want to laugh in rooms with other people and feel good. So I think people like having something to share with others, and laughing in comedy is that.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point, the communal experience. I mean, there are very few vibes similar to when you're in a theater or a comedy club or something with a bunch of people and you're all kind of sharing that experience together, especially with how a lot of comedians are, trying to limit how much people have their phones out in clubs and stuff like that. I think it really kind of helps facilitate that vibe, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I'm just happy I've always loved being a comedian. I started when, there was a dip in live performance, and, I would go to the Comedy Store and there'd be like 5 people in the audience. And I loved it then. But, to get to do it now when it's so popular and people want to come see shows, it's just the icing on the cake.
I love that. And I'm looking at your list of tour dates here, and you're on the road like crazy through the end of the year, and you also juggle a ton of other projects for movies and TV shows, which we'll get into. What do you do to keep yourself from getting burnt out, especially when you're on the road?
I mean, it's not easy, that's for sure. The travel part is always daunting. The shows themselves are so fun and easy, but you just have to take care of yourself. I'm really trying to be more health conscious on this tour. Go to the gyms in the hotels, not eat as much crap, not eat as late, get sleep. You just have to really, you sort of have to treat it like a sport to an extent. Right. Because every one of my tours, there are 100 cities, 150 shows, on top of all the acting I do and the podcast, the radio show. So it's a lot, but just balance is important.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, because that is a grueling schedule, especially like you said, you're doing multiple shows a night a lot of times. Talking about touring and playing different venues, your most recent special, Crushing It, is streaming on Netflix, and you have 2 other Netflix specials. I'm curious what the process is for deciding what town and what venue you're going to actually shoot the special looks like. How do you go about deciding that type of thing?
The first 2 were easy. I knew I wanted to do my Sweet and Salty one in Charlotte because I had this theater booked already for a festival, and it was my hometown, and we were like, oh, we already have this theater. Let's just do that. And then so that just kind of fell into place. And then for the good fortune, I wanted to do Chicago because it's where I met Jax, and a lot of that special was about her,
right,
my wife. And then the Seattle was really, for the last one, was when I'm on tour, you always remember certain audiences or theaters that just had this amazing energy. I left the show in Seattle, the tour before, going, wow, that was incredible. I got to remember that for next tour and next special. So you just keep it in the back of your head. And so for the end of this tour, which won't be for a bit, I have a couple cities in mind kind of in the back of my head, and as you get closer to time, you just sort of pick one.
You have your Netflix stand-up specials, and they're fantastic. But you've also been a part of some Netflix series, probably most notably Fubar, which just wrapped production on season 2 with you and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I gotta ask, what was it like the first day on set with that guy? Because that's gotta be an imposing presence coming from him.
Oh man, I was nervous at first just because, he's been famous for years and was the governor, and you just wanted him to like you, and I didn't know how he would feel about, me being a goofy comedian in this action world. And I sat down beside him, and he just, he was like, "You're a comedian. I like comedians." And he told me about his friendship with Milton Berle, and we just really connected right away on comedy and stand up, and then quickly became friends, like very comfortable with each other, joking with each other. I've been to his house a lot, ridden bikes with him. He's just a really neat guy and very motivational and kind. And when my dad was in the hospital, he FaceTimed my dad and gave him encouragement. So
that's awesome.
I really appreciate his generosity.
That's super cool. Now I'm going to peel back the curtain for the listener here a little bit. When we line up these interviews, we usually get what's called like a prep sheet sent to us, and it has a lot of stuff about your career and everything. But there were a couple things that were not on the prep sheet that I was given that I have to ask you about. And one of them was being the Netflix show Historical Roasts that I thought was amazing. I thought it was such an interesting concept to kind of flip the roast on its head like that. And you were a part of that as Princess Diana, and that was one of my favorite episodes of that entire series. How was that experience making that show? Because I feel like it does not get the respect that it deserves.
I mean, that was such a random thing to be a part of. I, certainly didn't think anyone was going to ask me to do that. I don't look anything like her. But I think, but when people ask me to do any sort of imitation, it's meant to be ridiculous and like over the top. I certainly am not an impersonator, for real. So I just do my dumb version of things. But yeah, I think it was before the roast, right now the roasts are so hot.
Right.
They just kind of ebb and flow, and that might have been a time when those were not being followed as much. But man, all people want to do now since the Tom Brady roast is put out a roast. So I think we might have just been a little too soon.
Yeah, that does feel like maybe it was like kind of, as you said before, maybe during a little bit of a dip. But God, I love those. I thought they were so great. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you about was you were a part of The Cabin with Bert Kreischer on Netflix. And I'm curious what the experience of filming that was, because that came out in October of 2020. So it was like the peak of COVID. So what was the filming process of that like, and do you have any kind of particular memories from that stick out?
Yeah, it was right, I want to say a few weeks before the world shut down, where people were kind of, there were rumblings of this COVID, but no one was really, taking it seriously yet. And I didn't know what to expect. They were just like, show up at this cabin. And I got there, and they were like, "We don't want you to see Bert yet. We just want you to be surprised, genuinely." And so I was told nothing of what to expect or do that I would be doing. And I walk in, and he's like in a bath, a mud bath, and they're like, "You're gonna hose him off." I was like, "What?" Okay, but I'm so used to him being ridiculous and half naked all the time that it didn't really faze me. So I just, but I think that's why I get along well with these male comics. I just go with the flow. It's just kind of like, whatever, they're ridiculous and let's have fun.
Yeah, you could definitely tell the vibe of just rolling with it was very present there, and it was a lot of fun to watch. That's why I had to ask you about that, because that's another one that like I loved watching, but I feel like that didn't really get recognized as much as it should have because of when it came out. So I was excited to talk to you about that.
Yeah, Bert, Bert's great. I've known him for years. He and his wife, Leanne, they'll group text me and, they'll have watched something of mine and are weighing in or checking on me. They're very sweet.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on the phone with me. Check out the Netflix special, Crushing It. Check out FUBAR on Netflix. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, bud.